Part 1, The Merchant's Nightmare. The quiet station morning. The morning shift on Epsilon 7 trading station always began the same way. Dr. Lydia Voss adjusted her medical scanner as she prepared for another day in the xenobiology lab. The station hummed with its usual mixture of alien voices, mechanical sounds, and the distant thrum of the fusion reactors. She loved this place, despite being on the very edge of human space. Here, she could study dozens of alien species while helping sick travelers who passed through. Her laboratory occupied a prime spot on the station's medical deck, where she had spent the last 3 years building relationships with traders, diplomats, and explorers from across the galaxy. The work was challenging but rewarding. Most aliens respected her expertise, and she had even published several papers on interspecies medicine that were now standard reading at Earth's medical academies. When giants cast shadows. The first sign of trouble came as a tremor through the station's deck plates. Dr. Voss looked up from her microscope as the overhead lights flickered. Through her lab's viewing window, she could see other beings in the corridor stopping their conversations and looking around nervously. Something was happening at the main docking ring. Station Master Quilx's voice crackled over the intercom system, his usual calm replaced by barely controlled fear. All station personnel, please remain in your designated areas. We are experiencing a routine security inspection. Repeat, this is a routine inspection. But Dr. Voss had lived on frontier stations long enough to know the difference between routine and terror. The way Quilx's voice shook, the sudden silence of the usual chatter in the corridors, and the deep vibration suggesting something massive had just docked, these were not routine signs. She secured her samples and moved toward the corridor. Through the transparent aluminum viewing ports, she could see the docking bay, and what she saw made her blood freeze. A Corthani warship, dark as midnight and bristling with weapons, had clamped onto the station. The ship was enormous, designed to intimidate as much as to fight. The warlord's arrival. Commander Brudick emerged from the airlock like a walking nightmare. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, his reptilian hide was covered in battle scars that told stories of 100 conflicts. The Corthani were known throughout the galaxy as warriors who solved disputes with violence and saw mercy as weakness. His yellow eyes swept the gathering crowd of station residents with the calculating gaze of a predator. Behind him marched a squad of Corthani soldiers, each one armed with plasma rifles and wearing armor that had seen real combat. Their synchronized steps echoed through the main concourse like the beating of war drums. Station security, consisting of 3 humans and 2 Valterian guards, could only watch helplessly as the aliens took control. Citizens of this pathetic station, Commander Brudick's voice boomed through the corridor without need for amplification. His species had evolved vocal cords capable of projecting sound that could shatter glass. I am Commander Brudick of the Corthani Expansion Fleet. This station now falls under our protection. The word, protection, carried a weight that everyone understood. It meant tribute, submission, and the constant threat of violence for anyone who resisted. The Doctor's Dilemma. Dr. Voss found herself pushed forward by the crowd as all station residents were herded into the main concourse. She noticed how the aliens moved with military precision, blocking all exits and positioning themselves to control the crowd. These weren't raiders or pirates. This was a planned occupation. Commander Brudick's gaze swept over the assembled beings until it settled on her. His scarred head tilted slightly, and she could see intelligence behind those predatory eyes. He had identified her as someone important. You, he pointed a clawed finger at her. The human healer. Step forward. Dr. Voss felt her heart racing, but she forced herself to walk calmly toward the massive alien. Around her, she could hear the whispered prayers and frightened breathing of her fellow station residents. Many of them had become her friends over the years, and she knew they were looking to her for leadership. I am Dr. Lydia Voss, she said, keeping her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. I run the xenobiology lab and medical facility on this station. The ultimatum. Commander Brudick studied her for a long moment, his reptilian features unreadable. Then his mouth opened in what might have been a smile, revealing rows of sharp teeth designed for tearing flesh. "Dr. Voss," he said, pronouncing her name like he was tasting it. "Your reputation precedes you. We have heard of the human who can heal any species, who has saved lives across a dozen worlds. Such skill would be valuable to the Korthani fleet." The implication was clear, and Dr. Voss felt the trap closing around her. The Korthani were not just here for tribute. They wanted to conscript her, to force her to serve their military campaigns as a combat medic. "I serve all beings equally," she replied carefully. "My medical oath does not allow me to participate in warfare." Commander Brudick's laugh was like the sound of grinding metal. "Your oath is irrelevant, human. You will serve the Korthani, or this station and everyone on it will be destroyed. We have use for healers who can keep our warriors fighting longer." Around the concourse, she could see the fear in her friends' faces. Quilks looked like he might collapse. The Valterian traders were already calculating whether they could escape to their ships. Everyone knew the Korthani reputation for keeping their promises, especially the violent ones. An unexpected voice. "Honey, I brought lunch." The voice came from behind the crowd, casual and cheerful, completely out of place in the tense atmosphere. Everyone turned to see a human man walking toward them, carrying what appeared to be a simple meal container. He was average in height and build, with graying hair and the kind of comfortable clothes that suggested he worked in the station's civilian sectors. Dr. Voss felt a mixture of relief and terror as she recognized her husband, Marcus Chen. He had been working in the station's supply depot when the Korthani arrived, and she had hoped he would find a way to hide until the danger passed. "Marcus, no," she whispered, but he was already walking past the confused Korthani soldiers, who seemed uncertain whether this strange human posed any threat. Marcus approached with the easy confidence of someone completely unaware of the danger surrounding him. He smiled at Commander Brudick as if greeting a customer at his supply depot. "Sorry about this," he said cheerfully. "My wife gets cranky when she forgets to eat. Doctor's orders, you know how it is." Commander Brudick stared down at this small, seemingly harmless human who had just walked past armed soldiers to bring his wife lunch. The alien's confusion was visible, as if he could not understand how anyone could be so oblivious to the obvious threat. "The merchant's mask. This is your mate?" Commander Brudick asked Dr. Voss, his voice filled with contempt. "This soft thing is what humans consider a worthy partner?" Marcus continued unpacking the meal container, setting out items on a nearby cargo crate as if they were having a picnic. His movements were calm and methodical, and Dr. Voss noticed something in his eyes that she had never seen before. It was not fear or confusion. It was calculation. "Oh, I wouldn't say I'm particularly soft," Marcus replied mildly, still organizing the food. "I've always believed that strength comes in many forms. Physical power is just one type, and honestly, not always the most effective." He looked up at Commander Brudick with a friendly smile that somehow managed to be more unsettling than threatening. "Take your situation here, for example. You've got bigger muscles, better weapons, more soldiers. By every physical measure, you're completely dominant." The Korthani commander's eyes narrowed. There was something about this human's tone that suggested the conversation was not going where he expected. "And yet," Marcus continued, taking a bite of his sandwich, "I can't help but notice that you're the one who's afraid." The concourse fell completely silent. Commander Brudick's scarred face darkened with rage, his claws extending as his body prepared for violence. But something in Marcus's calm demeanor stopped him from attacking immediately. "Afraid?" the alien growled. "I fear nothing, especially not a weak human merchant." Marcus nodded agreeably. "Of course not. That's why you brought an entire warship and a squad of soldiers to threaten one medical station on the edge of nowhere. Because you're not afraid at all." Dr. Voss watched her husband with growing amazement and terror. In 3 years of marriage, she had never seen this side of him. Marcus had always been kind, gentle, and completely peaceful. She was beginning to realize that she might not know her husband as well as she thought. Part 2: Echoes of War. The Recognition. Commander Bruddock's yellow eyes studied Marcus with growing intensity. Something about the human's posture, the way he held himself despite appearing relaxed, triggered a memory buried deep in the Corthani's military training. The alien's scarred face slowly shifted from anger to something approaching concern. "You speak strangely for a merchant," Bruddock said, his voice losing some of its commanding boom. "Most humans cower when they see Corthani warriors. Yet you stand there eating as if we are nothing more than an inconvenience." Marcus swallowed his bite of sandwich and considered the question seriously. "Well, you're certainly inconvenient. My wife and I were planning to have a quiet lunch before her afternoon appointments. Now we're having this conversation instead." He gestured around the concourse where dozens of frightened beings watched the exchange. "And you've upset a lot of people who were just trying to go about their day. That does qualify as inconvenient." Dr. Voss watched her husband with amazement. She had married Marcus Chen, a quiet supply depot manager who preferred reading technical manuals to watching action vids. The man standing before Commander Bruddock seemed like a completely different person, someone wearing her husband's face but possessing an inner steel she had never suspected. Memories of the silent death. Behind Commander Bruddock, one of his lieutenants stepped forward. This Corthani was older, with more battle scars and the cautious movements of a veteran warrior. He whispered something in their harsh native language, and Bruddock's expression changed dramatically. "Sergeant Vexkar asks an interesting question," Bruddock said slowly. "He wants to know if you have ever served in the military, human." Marcus paused in his meal preparation. For just a moment, his friendly expression flickered, and something cold and calculating showed through. "I've had various jobs over the years. Supply management, logistics, problem solving. Nothing too exciting." But Sergeant Vexkar was not satisfied. He stepped closer, his scarred head tilted as he examined Marcus from different angles. When he spoke, his words sent a chill through every Corthani in the room. "The way you stand. The way your eyes track movement. The complete lack of fear." His voice grew hushed. "Commander, this human moves like the silent death." The reaction was immediate. Every Corthani warrior in the concourse tensed, their weapons shifting toward Marcus. The name, Silent Death, carried weight in their culture, spoken in whispers around military campfires and used to frighten young soldiers into following orders. The legend revealed. Commander Bruddock took an involuntary step backward. Impossible. The Silent Death was a myth. A story told to explain our defeats during the war. "What war?" Dr. Voss asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She looked between her husband and the suddenly nervous aliens, trying to understand what had changed. Marcus sighed deeply, as if he had hoped to avoid this conversation. He carefully sealed his meal container and set it aside, his movements now carrying a precision that had been hidden before. "The Corthani expansion war," he said quietly. 15 years ago. Your husband's people decided they wanted to claim human territory. It didn't go well for them." Sergeant Vexkar was backing away now, his weapon raised but his hands shaking. "You are him. The human who destroyed the Third Fleet. Who walked through our strongest fortress and killed General Mordak with his bare hands." "That's enough," Marcus said, and though his voice remained calm, there was an edge to it that made everyone in the concourse freeze. "Ancient history. I retired from that life." But Commander Bruddock was putting pieces together now, his military training overriding his initial shock. James Mitchell. Colonel James Mitchell of the Human Defense Corps. The man who ended our expansion single-handedly. Dr. Voss felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Her gentle husband, the man who brought her lunch and read technical manuals, was a legendary war hero? The most feared soldier in human space? The warriors passed. 15 years ago, the Corthani Empire decided that humanity looked weak. Marcus, or rather, Colonel Mitchell, continued, his voice taking on the tone of a military briefing. You had conquered 12 systems, enslaved 6 species, and thought Earth would be easy prey. He walked slowly toward Commander Bruddock, and despite being half the alien size, the Corthani backed away. Your fleets attacked our outer colonies. Your soldiers killed civilians. Your commanders made the mistake of thinking that because humans are smaller and softer than Corthani, we must be weaker. The concourse was completely silent now. Even the station's background hum seemed muted as everyone listened to this impossible revelation. They sent me to study your tactics, Mitchell continued. Learn how you fought, how you thought, how you could be stopped. It took me 3 months to infiltrate your lines. Another month to reach your command structure. Commander Bruddock's breathing was becoming labored. The stories of the silent death were the stuff of nightmares in Corthani military culture. A human who appeared from nowhere, struck without warning, and vanished like smoke. Entire battalions had been found dead with no sign of how they had been killed. The price of peace. General Mordak was quite proud of his fortress, Mitchell said, his voice carrying the weight of old memories. Impregnable, he called it. Filled with your finest warriors, protected by energy shields, armed with the most advanced weapons your empire could provide. Sergeant Vexkar was openly trembling now. You walked through our shields like they were paper. Killed 300 warriors without making a sound. Found the general in his private chambers and offered him a choice, Mitchell finished. Withdraw from human space immediately, or I would personally visit every Corthani military installation until your empire learned to leave us alone. Dr. Voss stared at her husband in shock. You killed all those soldiers? Mitchell's expression softened as he looked at her. I didn't want to, Lydia. But they had already killed thousands of our people. Women, children, civilians who never hurt anyone. Someone had to make it stop. He turned back to Commander Bruddock. Your general chose wisdom. The Corthani Empire withdrew from human space and signed a non-aggression pact. I thought that would be the end of it. The threat returns. Commander Bruddock was struggling with the revelation, his tactical mind warring with his ingrained aggression. On one hand, he faced the most dangerous human who had ever lived. On the other hand, Mitchell appeared to be alone, retired, and protecting a medical station full of civilians. That was 15 years ago, Bruddock said, trying to regain his composure. You are older now. Softer. Living among healers and merchants has made you weak. Mitchell smiled, and for the first time, it was not a friendly expression. Would you like to test that theory? You are still just one human, Bruddock continued, though his voice lacked conviction. I have 20 warriors, plasma weapons, and a warship. Even the silent death cannot fight an entire squad. 20 warriors, Mitchell repeated thoughtfully. A light cruiser with standard armament. Boarding party equipped for intimidation rather than serious combat. He looked around the concourse, noting exit points, cover positions, and weapon placements. Honestly, I'm a little insulted. 15 years ago, your people sent fleets after me. Dr. Voss watched her husband transform before her eyes. The gentle supply manager was gone, replaced by someone who calculated odds and tactical advantages as naturally as breathing. This was Colonel James Mitchell, the silent death, the human who had single-handedly ended an interstellar war. The line in the sand. Here's what's going to happen, Mitchell said, his voice carrying absolute authority. You're going to return to your ship, leave this station, and report back to your superiors that Epsilon-7 is under the protection of someone they really don't want to anger. Commander Bruddock's pride warred with his survival instincts. And if we refuse? Mitchell's smile widened. Then you'll discover why your empire decided that peace with humanity was preferable to war. The standoff stretched for long seconds. Around the concourse, station residents held their breath, caught between hope and terror. The Korthani warriors looked to their commander for orders, their weapons ready but their confidence shaken. Finally, Sergeant Vexkar spoke in his native language, urgent and insistent. Commander Brudik listened, his expression growing darker. "My sergeant reminds me that dead heroes tell no tales," Brudik said finally. "Even if you are the silent death, you cannot protect everyone. Your wife, for instance. She would make an excellent addition to our medical corps." The temperature in the concourse seemed to drop several degrees. When Mitchell spoke again, his voice was barely above a whisper, but every word carried the weight of absolute certainty. "Commander Brudik, you just made the last mistake of your very short remaining life. Part 3, The Reckoning begins. The storm unleashed. The transformation was instantaneous and terrifying. One moment, Marcus Chen stood calmly beside his lunch container. The next, Colonel James Mitchell moved with a speed that defied human limitations. The first Korthani warrior never saw the attack coming. Mitchell's hand struck like lightning, finding the precise nerve cluster that would drop a being 3 times his size. Dr. Voss gasped as her husband became a blur of motion. He rolled under the second warrior's plasma rifle blast, came up behind him, and delivered a strike that sent the alien crashing into a support pillar. The weapon clattered across the deck plates, forgotten. "Impossible," Commander Brudik breathed, watching his elite soldiers fall like dominoes. "No human moves that fast." Mitchell paused in his assault, crouched beside an unconscious Korthani warrior. "Speed isn't about fast muscles, Commander. It's about knowing exactly where to move and when. Your people never learned that lesson." Around the concourse, the remaining Korthani were spreading out, trying to establish firing positions. But Mitchell had already calculated their movements, predicted their tactics. He had studied their species for months during the war, learned every strength and weakness. The hunter becomes hunted. Station Master Quilks watched in amazement as the mild-mannered supply manager systematically dismantled a squad of elite alien warriors. Mitchell moved through the Korthani formation like water flowing around stones, never where they expected him to be, always striking from impossible angles. "All civilians, evacuate to the lower levels," Mitchell called out without breaking his rhythm. He ducked under a plasma blast that scorched the wall behind him, spun around a support beam, and emerged behind 2 more warriors. "This is about to get much worse." Dr. Voss found herself frozen, torn between fleeing and staying to help her husband. The man she thought she knew was gone, replaced by someone who fought with the cold precision of a machine designed for war. "Lydia, go," Mitchell said, his voice gentle despite the chaos around him. He caught a warrior's wrist, redirected the alien's momentum, and sent him tumbling into his companions. "I need to know you're safe." Commander Brudik raised his own weapon, a massive plasma cannon designed to punch through armored vehicles. "Enough games, silent death. Face me directly or watch your mate die." The threat hung in the air like poison. Mitchell stopped moving, his body going perfectly still as every tactical calculation in his mind focused on a single priority: protecting Lydia. The tactical mind. "You're making this personal," Mitchell said quietly. "That's a mistake." He reached into his jacket and pulled out what appeared to be a simple communication device. But when he activated it, warning klaxons began sounding throughout the station. Emergency bulkheads slammed shut, cutting off the Korthani's escape routes. The lights shifted to emergency red, and the artificial gravity fluctuated slightly. "What have you done?" Commander Brudik demanded, his cannon swinging between Mitchell and the fleeing civilians. "Station Master Quilks installed some interesting security features when this place was built," Mitchell replied calmly. "Remote access to environmental controls, emergency protocols, even the ability to isolate specific sections. Quite useful for someone who knows the access codes." Sergeant Vexkar was trying to reach the docking bay, but found his path blocked by sealed blast doors. "Commander, we're trapped." Mitchell smiled grimly. "Now we're fighting on my terms. Engineering the battlefield. Chief Engineer Tombak had been monitoring the situation from his control room deep in the station's heart. The Talaxian was built like a tree trunk, with 4 arms and the patience of his long-lived species. He had watched the security feeds as the quiet human revealed himself to be something far more dangerous. "Colonel Mitchell," Tombak's voice crackled over Mitchell's comm device. "I have isolated the Korthani ship from station power. They cannot leave without manual override from your location." "Appreciated, Chief," Mitchell replied, dodging another plasma blast. "How long can you maintain the lockdown?" "As long as necessary." The Korthani lack the technical knowledge to override Talaxian engineering. Commander Brudek was beginning to understand the trap closing around him. The human had not just revealed his identity, he had been planning this response from the moment the Korthani ship docked. Every move had been calculated, every advantage considered. "You knew we were coming," Brudek accused. Mitchell shrugged, using the gesture to mask his approach toward another warrior. "Pirates and raiders have been increasing along this sector for months. It was only a matter of time before someone tried to claim Epsilon-7. I made preparations. The station's secret." Dr. Voss had retreated to a safe distance, but she could still hear everything through her comm unit. The revelation that her husband had prepared for this kind of attack raised new questions about their quiet life on the frontier station. "Marcus. James, who are you really?" she whispered into her communicator. His voice came back gentle but tired. "I'm the man who fell in love with a brilliant doctor and wanted to spend his retirement bringing her lunch. But I'm also the soldier who swore to protect human space from anyone who threatened it." A plasma blast scorched the air near his head, and his tone hardened. "Right now, I'm the man who's going to make sure these aliens regret threatening my wife." The remaining Korthani were bunching together, trying to form a defensive position. But Mitchell had anticipated this too. The emergency lighting cast confusing shadows, the modified gravity made their movements clumsy, and the sealed doors eliminated their escape routes. The Predator's advantage. Captain Nexus was the youngest of the Korthani warriors, promoted to his position based on raw aggression rather than tactical thinking. He raised his weapon toward where he thought Mitchell was hiding, but found only empty air. "Behind you," Mitchell's voice whispered. Nexus spun around, firing wildly, but Mitchell was already moving. The human seemed to flow like smoke, impossible to pin down or predict. Each time the Korthani thought they had him cornered, he appeared somewhere else entirely. "This is impossible," Captain Nexus gasped. "No being can move like this." "You're thinking like a predator," Mitchell replied from the shadows. "Always trying to chase down your prey with brute force. But sometimes the prey is more dangerous than the hunter." Commander Brudek was beginning to understand that his tactical situation was hopeless. Half his warriors were down, the rest were panicking, and the human was systematically dismantling their formation. Worse, they were trapped on a station that was apparently designed to be defended by a single person. The cornered beast. "You cannot defeat us all," Brudek roared, his plasma cannon tracking frantically across the concourse. "We are Korthani warriors. We have conquered worlds." Mitchell stepped into the open, no longer bothering to hide. His clothes were torn and he had minor burns from near misses, but his eyes held the calm confidence of someone who knew exactly how this fight would end. "You conquered worlds full of beings who were weaker than you," he said simply. "Civilizations that relied on others for protection. But you've never faced humans on their own ground, defending what they love." He gestured around the concourse, where the emergency lights cast everything in bloody red. "This isn't conquest, Commander. This is survival. And humans are very, very good at surviving." The remaining Korthani were backing toward the sealed blast doors, their weapons raised but their confidence shattered. They had come expecting to intimidate civilians and had instead found themselves facing the most dangerous human alive. "Last chance," Mitchell said, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Surrender now, and I'll let you return to your empire with a message. Continue fighting, and I'll show you why the Korthani learned to fear the dark. Commander Brudek's finger tightened on his weapon's trigger. Behind him, his surviving warriors waited for orders, caught between their military training and their growing terror. The concourse fell silent except for the hum of emergency systems and the distant sound of station life continuing in the sealed sections. The standoff stretched for heartbeats that felt like hours. Then Commander Brudek made his choice. Part 4, The Guardian's Fury. The Commander's Gambit. Commander Brudek's plasma cannon erupted in a blaze of superheated energy that could melt through starship armor. The blast scorched the air where Mitchell had been standing, leaving molten metal and burning atmosphere in its wake. But the human was no longer there. Predictable, Mitchell's voice echoed from somewhere in the emergency lighting. Your species always chooses violence when cornered. It's why you'll never truly win a war. The remaining Korthani warriors spun in circles, trying to locate their target. The emergency lighting cast shifting shadows that seemed to move independently, creating dozens of potential hiding places. Mitchell had become one with the station's modified environment, a ghost haunting his own battlefield. Captain Nexus fired blindly into the shadows, his plasma rifle painting the walls with deadly energy. Show yourself, coward. Fight like a warrior. I am fighting like a warrior, Mitchell replied, his voice seeming to come from everywhere at once. A human warrior. We don't fight for glory or honor. We fight to win. The station's hidden arsenal. Dr. Voss watched from her sealed medical bay, her heart pounding as she witnessed her husband's transformation into something beyond her understanding. Through the security feeds, she could see Mitchell moving through the concourse like a predator stalking prey. Chief Tombak, she called over the intercom. Is there anything else, Marcus? James hasn't told us about this station? The Talaxian engineer's 4 arms worked frantically at his control panels. Dr. Voss, your husband approached me shortly after you both arrived 3 years ago. He said he was a retired security consultant and suggested some modifications to our defensive systems. Her blood ran cold. What kind of modifications? Emergency force fields, remote weapon controls, atmospheric manipulation. He said a trading station needed to be able to protect itself from pirates and raiders. Tombak paused. I believed he was simply being cautious. Through the security feed, Dr. Voss watched her husband emerge from behind a support pillar and disable another Korthani warrior with surgical precision. Every move was calculated, every strike designed to incapacitate rather than kill. Even in combat, he was showing mercy his enemies would never offer. Reinforcements arrive. The station shuddered as something massive docked with the main airlock. Through the viewing ports, Dr. Voss could see another Korthani ship, this one twice the size of the first. Her heart sank as she realized their situation had just become infinitely worse. James, she called over the comm, more ships are arriving. Mitchell's response was calm, almost conversational. I know. I've been tracking them on long-range sensors for the past hour. An hour? Commander Brudek snarled. You knew more were coming and still chose to fight? I chose to protect my wife and this station, Mitchell replied. How many ships you brought is irrelevant. The airlock cycled, and General Vextar strode onto the station. Where Commander Brudek was a brute warrior, the general was clearly a strategist. His scarred hide bore the marks of decades of warfare, and his yellow eyes held the cold intelligence of a military mind. Behind him marched 50 fresh warriors, armed with heavy weapons and moving with the precision of elite troops. The general surveyed the scene, his scattered and demoralized advance force, the emergency lighting, the sealed blast doors. So, General Vextar said, his voice carrying absolute authority. The silent death has returned. The strategist's assessment. General Vextar ignored the ongoing skirmish and walked directly to the center of the concourse. His presence immediately calmed his scattered warriors, giving them a focal point around which to rally. Colonel James Mitchell, he called out formally. I am General Vextar of the 4th Korthani Battle Fleet. I have come to speak with you. Mitchell emerged from the shadows, his posture relaxed but ready. General. I was wondering when someone with actual military sense would show up. You have caused quite a stir in our empire, Vextar continued, studying Mitchell with professional interest. 15 years of peace, and now the silent death appears on a forgotten trading station. My superiors are very curious about your presence here. I'm retired, Mitchell said simply. I've been retired for 15 years. I just want to live quietly with my wife. General Vextar's laugh was harsh but not mocking. A warrior of your caliber does not retire, Colonel. He merely chooses his battles more carefully. The true threat revealed. Admiral Korath emerged from the second airlock, flanked by his personal guard. The admiral was ancient by Korthani standards, his hide more scar tissue than original skin. He had been commanding fleets when Mitchell was still a child, and his reputation was legendary even among his own people. 15 years I have waited for this moment, Admiral Korath said, his voice carrying the weight of decades. 15 years since you humiliated our empire and forced us to accept peace. Mitchell's posture shifted slightly, recognizing the true threat. Admiral Korath. I remember your service record. You're not here for a trading station. Indeed not. The admiral gestured around the concourse. This pathetic outpost is merely bait. We have been tracking unusual activity in this sector, reports of a human matching your description. We needed to draw you out. Dr. Voss felt the blood drain from her face as she understood the implications. Their quiet life, their peaceful retirement, had all been an illusion. The Korthani had been hunting them for years. The trap revealed. You see, Colonel Mitchell, Admiral Korath continued, your little demonstration 15 years ago created certain complications. Young warriors throughout the empire began questioning our superiority. Some even suggested that perhaps humans were not the weak prey we believed them to be. The admiral's guards spread out, their weapons trained on Mitchell but maintaining a respectful distance. A single human defeating our finest warriors became a story that undermined everything our culture stands for. You became a symbol of our weakness. Mitchell nodded slowly, understanding the deeper game. So you need to prove I'm not invincible. Show your people that the silent death can be killed. Precisely. Admiral Korath smiled, revealing teeth filed to sharp points. Your death will restore the natural order. Korthani supremacy will be unquestioned, and we can resume our expansion across the galaxy. The stakes escalate. Chief Engineer Tombak's voice crackled over the intercom. Colonel Mitchell, I'm reading massive energy signatures from their ships. They're charging weapons systems. Dr. Voss watched in horror as the tactical display showed Korthani battle cruisers surrounding the station. James, they're going to destroy Epsilon-7 regardless of what happens here. Admiral Korath's laugh was cold and calculating. The good doctor understands the situation perfectly. This station will be destroyed, its inhabitants scattered to the solar winds. But first, the galaxy will watch the silent death fall to Korthani might. Mitchell was quiet for a long moment, his tactical mind processing the new information. Around him, nearly 100 alien warriors waited for his response. The odds were impossible, the situation hopeless. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a certainty that made even Admiral Korath pause. Admiral, you've made 3 critical errors in your planning. The humans' calculation. First, Mitchell continued, his voice growing stronger, you assumed I've been living a quiet retirement for 15 years. That I've grown soft and lost my edge. He gestured around the modified station. This entire facility has been prepared for exactly this kind of assault. Every system, every corridor, every piece of equipment has been optimized for defensive warfare. Admiral Korath's confidence flickered slightly. Even so, you are one human against an entire fleet. Second error, Mitchell continued. You assumed I was alone. The station's communication system activated, and voices began speaking in a dozen different languages. Human voices, all of them carrying the crisp authority of military training. Colonel Mitchell, this is Captain Rodriguez of the destroyer HSS Vengeance. We're reading Korthani fleet movements in your sector. Mitchell, this is Major Kim aboard the cruiser Indomitable. My Marines are standing by for boarding operations. James, it's Admiral Chen of the 3rd Fleet. We've been monitoring this situation for the past 6 hours. Help is on the way. Dr. Voss stared at the communication display in shock. Her quiet husband had somehow assembled an entire human battle fleet without her knowledge. The final error. Admiral Karatha's scarred face darkened with rage. Impossible. Our sensors showed no human military presence in this sector. Mitchell smiled grimly. That brings us to your third and most critical error, Admiral. You assumed that 15 years of peace meant humanity had grown weak. The station shuddered as massive shapes emerged from behind the asteroid field where they had been hiding. Human warships, their hulls dark against the stars, began surrounding the Korthani fleet. The truth is, Admiral, we've spent 15 years preparing for the day your people decided to break the peace treaty. Every human colony now has defensive fleets. Every trading station has hidden weapon systems. Every retired soldier like me has been given the resources to protect what matters most. Dr. Voss realized that her husband had never truly retired. He had been a guardian all along, watching and waiting for threats to emerge. You wanted to prove that humans are weak, Mitchell continued, his voice carrying across the concourse to every alien warrior present. Instead, you're about to discover why the rest of the galaxy learned to respect us. Admiral Karath raised his weapon, his tactical mind recognizing that the situation had shifted beyond his control. Around him, his warriors prepared for a battle that would determine the fate of 2 civilizations. Then let us finish what we started 15 years ago, the Admiral snarled. Mitchell's response was simple, carrying the weight of absolute certainty, let's.